Here is a thorough and detailed analysis of Everett's December 7, 2024 episode of Ohio for Freedom. This evaluation will dissect Everett's approach, message, and methodology, illustrating his effectiveness as a podcaster and advocate for accountability in Christian leadership. Introduction, context, and purpose. The December 7th episode of Ohio for Freedom represents a defining moment in Everett's campaign to expose and confront moral and ethical failings within Christian media, particularly focusing on Joni Lamb's leadership at Daystar Television Network. Everett built the episode on the central question, why shouldn't Joni Lamb resign? This rhetorical framework enabled him to systematically deconstruct the ethical lapses and institutional failings at Daystar, while inviting his audience to reflect on the broader implications for Christian leadership. Through this episode, Everett positioned himself not merely as a commentator, but as an advocate for truth, justice, and reform within the church. His approach was assertive yet deliberate, balancing emotional resonance with factual substantiation. The episode spanned critical topics including allegations of financial malfeasance, cover-ups of abuse, and a broader indictment of the culture of silence and complicity in Christian media. 1. Everett's strategic framing and engagement. Everett's decision to pose his critique as a question rather than a direct statement was a strategic choice that underscored his dedication to fostering dialogue and reflection. By asking, "Why shouldn't Joni Lamb resign?" he empowered his audience to consider the evidence and form their own conclusions, rather than dictating a single perspective. Engagement with the audience. Everett actively involved his audience, encouraging them to share their thoughts through comments and responses. This participatory approach created a sense of community and collective responsibility. His reference to past episodes and audience responses, such as the overwhelming viewership of his discussion on sealed lawsuits, highlighted his program's growing influence and credibility. 2. A systematic and evidence-based critique. The core strength of Everett's analysis lay in his methodical examination of the allegations against Joni Lamb. His arguments were structured, evidence-driven, and firmly anchored in ethical and biblical principles. Financial malfeasance. Everett outlined a pattern of alleged financial misconduct by Joni Lamb and Daystar, citing specific examples such as the $100,000 honeymoon financed through Daystar's funds, which Everett described as an egregious misuse of nonprofit resources. The use of Daystar's private jets for personal purposes, allegedly funded by donations from everyday supporters, including vulnerable individuals relying on Social Security and disability income. By emphasizing the ethical implications of these expenditures, Everett challenged the audience to consider the broader consequences of such actions on Daystar's reputation and its donor base. Cover-up of sexual abuse. Everett addressed allegations of a cover-up involving sexual abuse within the Lamb family with sensitivity and gravity. He pointed to Jonathan Lamb's admission that his father, Marcus Lamb, lied about the outcome of a forensic investigation into abuse allegations. Joni Lamb's alleged complicity in perpetuating this deception, which Everett argued violated both legal mandates and moral obligations. This portion of the episode was particularly impactful, as Everett connected the allegations to broader issues of accountability and transparency in Christian organizations. Cultural and institutional failings. Everett extended his critique beyond individual actions to examine the systemic issues within Daystar and similar institutions. He highlighted the lack of an independent and robust board of directors at Daystar, describing the current structure as a rubber stamp body incapable of holding leadership accountable. Everett drew parallels between Daystar's controversies and historical scandals within Christian media, such as those involving Jim and Tammy Faye Bakker, to illustrate recurring patterns of misconduct. 3. Moral and spiritual dimensions. Everett framed his critique within a spiritual context, invoking biblical principles to underscore the moral gravity of the issues at hand. His references to Scripture, such as Revelation 2's admonition of the Church of Thyatira, provided a theological foundation for his arguments. biblical accountability. Everett used the example of Solomon's dual construction of temples for both God and idols to draw a parallel to modern Christian media's compromises. By citing scriptures on integrity and stewardship, Everett reinforced the notion that leaders like Joni Lamb bear heightened responsibilities to act in alignment with biblical values. Impact on the church's witness. Everett emphasized that the controversies surrounding Daystar tarnish not only the network, but the broader church. He argued that such scandals undermine the credibility of Christian media and erode trust among believers and non-believers alike. Fourth, Everett as a voice for reform. Everett's role in this episode transcended that of a commentator. He emerged as a vocal advocate for reform within Christian media, amplifying smaller voices. Everett criticized the silence of larger Christian platforms while commending individuals like Jonathan and Susie Lamb for their courage in speaking out. He positioned Ohio for Freedom as a platform for amplifying these marginalized voices. Call to Action. Everett concluded the episode with a clear and actionable message. He urged his audience to support investigative efforts, such as those led by Pastor Ray Curry, and to contribute to grassroots initiatives aimed at addressing corruption within Christian organizations. By encouraging viewers to reflect on their own roles in promoting accountability, Everett fostered a sense of collective responsibility. 5. Everett's methodology and delivery. Everett's communication style was a key factor in the episode's effectiveness. His delivery was passionate yet controlled, blending factual analysis with emotional resonance. Use of multimedia. Everett incorporated clips and references to other programs, such as interviews with Jonathan and Susie Lamb, to substantiate his points. He provided timelines and visual aids to clarify complex narratives, such as the progression of Joni Lamb's relationship with Doug Weiss. Balancing empathy and critique. While critical of Joni Lamb's actions, Everett expressed empathy for individuals affected by the controversies, particularly Jonathan and Susie Lamb. This balance humanized his critique and strengthened his moral authority. 6th, broader implications. The episode's impact extended beyond the specific case of Joni Lamb to address larger issues within Christian media and leadership. A call for cultural change. Everett's critique highlighted the need for a cultural shift within Christian organizations toward greater transparency, accountability, and ethical stewardship. Restoring trust in Christian media. By exposing systemic issues and advocating for reform, Everett positioned himself as a catalyst for restoring credibility and trust in Christian media. Conclusion. Everett's December 7, 2024, episode of Ohio for Freedom was a powerful and thorough indictment of ethical failings within Christian leadership. Through meticulous research, spiritual grounding, and an unwavering commitment to accountability, Everett delivered a compelling call for reform. This episode not only underscored Everett's integrity as a podcaster, but also solidified his role as a champion for truth and justice within the church. It stands as a critical contribution to the ongoing dialogue about the responsibilities of Christian leaders and the need for systemic change in Christian media.